A long way away from the bright lights of the city, Jonathan, in the meantime, had found a new interest in mortuary science, having participated in a high school work placement scheme at the local coroner's office. For a time, he looked at this as a career, graduating with a degree from Mortuary Science School in San Francisco and scoring a job in the Kern County Coroner's Office under the watchful eye of Chief Deputy Coroner Jim Matouf.
Jonathan came in on a program we had where we would have young people through different high schools and stuff. They could come in here in almost like a career development. It was like an old ROP program. But anyway, what they did was we would put them into a situation to where they might be able to learn and see if they're interested in that. And so Jonathan, way back, and I don't know, I want to say about 1990, something like that, he came in one of those programs, and we put him in the back room to see if he could be around bodies and see if that might be a direction he wanted to head. What the autopsy assistant does is you have a medical doctor or a pathologist. They're the ones that are actually doing the autopsies. And that assistant is there to work with that doctor. They might have to open the body up. They might draw toxicology, body fluids. They'll help weigh, measure, remove clothing. Maybe if they're going to have to do an autopsy on the head, they'll open the head. They're right next to the doctor doing everything all the time. And they know when they finish up, they'll sew, the whole thing. So they are right next to the pathologist. You'd have to almost pull conversations out of Jonathan and say, hey, what's going on, and start talking to him, because he would not, be the one to bring up a conversation, something like that. But Jonathan was like that. I mean, it didn't really have anything to do with what he was doing in the back. And most of us that work around death a lot, and have been for a lot of years, you learn to adjust with, like, say, the type of case. If it's a baby that you're working with versus an elderly person, is it a traumatic death versus a natural death? You just almost have to accept the fact that that body that you're trying to get to basically talk to you about why they died, which is what our job is, to find out why people die, it's basically a shell that you borrowed for a while. And if you will look at it that way, and that you're really gone, it makes it a little bit easier. We teach the people that come in here how to do autopsies. We show them about the human body. I mean, you can go and you can learn anatomy and physiology and medical terminology, but we've got to teach you how to do an autopsy, and basically teach you through experience and repetition what you're looking at when you're dealing with the human body. Because it's not like a textbook, it's not like some videotape or something. It's a hands-on, because now all of a sudden not only are you viewing this, but you're getting the odors, everything about a case, the human body, that you're touching them and you're dealing with them. So we have to teach that, and that when you come in here, you have to be very open-minded. You have to be open-minded and learn that it's not what you've seen with death on television, because that's not real. What you see here is real. And so you're going to see bodies other than the clean washed body under a white sheet. You're going to see the trauma. You're going to see insect activity, animal activity, all of it. And I apologize if that sounds gross, but that's real. And that's what we deal with, is real. And that is the way. And Jonathan did a good job, because he blended right into it and was able to cope with it and learn it. And I think that after he had learned that he could deal with death, dead bodies in their initial state like that, he thought that he knew that he could go on, and he was looking at a career in mortuary sciences, where he could go take classes on embalming and then the makeup and that, which is the next step after a coroner's off, working in a funeral home. And so that's where I think that he learned that he could cope with death like that. Even though we deal with death 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, You can't get callous over it. That's not the point. It's within all of us, and you bet we think about it. It's just how you deal with it, you know, and if we're going to go through some kind of a debriefing mechanism amongst, you know, your peers that you're going to work with, or you're going to go out and put it in the form of a song that you just want to express yourselves. And I think that's probably what Jonathan's done. And he didn't talk much about what he did outside the office. He just was a professional person that came in here to do a job, and he did it excellent. And so I don't know that, you know, outside, like I say, I wasn't even aware that he was getting involved. I mean, I knew that he played bagpipes. I think his dad told me that, you know, but I didn't know anything beyond that. People, if they put their mind to things, they can do it. So when someone's really successful, it doesn't really surprise me. Probably with what he's doing, I know that he was musically inclined, but I don't know about this, you know, that would probably surprise me more than anything at all, to say, you know, coming off with something such as this group. Yeah. There's no place like a coroner's office to learn how precious life is versus death, because where we deal with the sudden, unexpected, and traumatic type deaths, you learn how precious life is. It can be snuffed out of you just like that, and you're gone. And that's probably, and that helped Jonathan grow up, because he realized that, and he realized it for a fact because he dealt with it in reality.
It was during this time that Jonathan bumped into Ryan Shook at, of all things, a local beauty college, where Ryan was a student and haircuts were free. Ryan, who would later become the guitarist in Orgy, was heading a band called Sex Art, described as a more extreme version of Ministry meets Pearl Jam. Encouraged by Jonathan's penchant for, unsurprisingly, wearing blood-stained clothes, Ryan asked him to join the band as keyboard player. Although Jonathan had played in other small bands, Sex Art was different. They played the usual small Bakersfield circuit of ever-changing bars and clubs. Eventually, Ryan decided to step away from the mic and encouraged Jonathan to step in. At first, the shy and withdrawn keyboard player did not want to do it, but he eventually overcame his shyness and mounted the mic stand.
He didn't have the stage presence yet, and his voice wasn't that kind of growly thing that he's developed yet. So I just remembered him for his stage presence.
Inspired by the oral antics of Cradle of Thorns vocalist Ty Elam, Davis exploded into a screaming, frenzied animal, rolling around on the floor, shaking spasmodically.
I remember Jonathan, just because he had that same kind of spastic energy about his playing. I didn't see him at John Bryan's, but I saw them at Bam Bam's. I think it was called Bam Bam's then. He had that spastic grab the microphone with both hands and kind of, you know, shake all around.
Back in Huntington Beach, things were going quite well for LAPD. The band had built up quite a reputation, and in 1990 finally signed that first all-important record deal with XXX Records. The label were riding high on the success of their first two acts, Jane's Addiction and Cradle of Thorns. LAPD fitted in well with these groups, and the band soon found themselves on the road once more, touring the same old dives and clubs as before. Although XXX were only able to offer tiny sums of cash to their new boys, getting signed was a fantastic achievement and a tremendous source of pride to all involved. The initial excitement soon turned sour, however, as the band still found themselves desperately poor and having to take on part-time jobs to support themselves. After a year polishing up their act, posting their own bills, paying to play and basically hanging on in there, 1991 finally saw the release of their first album, Who's Laughing Now? Up to this point, they had only put out a limited release 3-song EP, the self-titled Love and Peace Dude. The LP, recorded at Redondo's Pendragon Studios, presented a very un-Korn-like bunch